Well, welcome to Whispers of History. I'm glad you're here. And tonight we wander into the highlands of ancient Ethiopia, long before espresso bars, long before ceramic mugs that say, "But first, coffee." Because yes, it turns out your sleepy modern caffeine ritual, it has roots older than empires. And somewhere in that mountain air, someone invented a travel-friendly coffee kit. With no branding, no influencers, just practicality, and maybe a bit of brilliance. And if you're here to relax, to drift, or just to hear stories that stretch back centuries without stretching your patience, you're in the right place. So gently, like the aroma of roasting beans at dawn. Don't tap subscribe if you'd like to wander with us again. Leave a comment, just your location and local time. It's always nice to know who else is quietly listening beneath the stars. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. The ground beneath your feet is warm, not hot, not dry, just warm like it remembers the sun but doesn't brag about it. You're standing somewhere in the Ethiopian highlands and the world smells like roasted earth, wind-blown wood smoke, and a strange hint of something nutty. Maybe almond, maybe anticipation. It's the 9th century. Give or take a few quiet centuries where goats outpaced historians. The terrain is uneven but familiar. Grass tall enough to rustle, trees not tall but defiant. Everything here grows with a kind of quiet determination like the people. You hear the faint clink of something small and metal in a cloth pouch. That's the kit. The travel kit. Nestled between a strip of linen and a dry leaf pouch, it's an old-world survival pack for coffee. Yes, actual coffee. Roasted beans, a tiny clay mortar, and a slow-brewing ritual that could rival your cousin's French press, but without the posturing. The man carrying it is named, and he's not a king or a merchant. He's a goat herd. His job involves more bleeding than politics. But he's about to walk for 3 days across wild, sun-baked land, and he will not be doing it without caffeine. Your historical fact: Ethiopia is widely believed to be the birthplace of coffee, with early oral traditions tracing its use back to regions like and. While the exact timeline is hazy, locals were roasting and consuming coffee in portable, field-friendly ways long before, and coffee chains turned it into lifestyle content. The morning is still. Kneels beside a flat stone, grinds a handful of beans with rhythmic precision, and pours water into a narrow clay pot called a. The pot is blackened from use, shaped like an hourglass that's grown tired of sand. So weird but lovely detail, some early Ethiopian travelers mixed coffee with animal fat to make portable energy balls. Protein, caffeine, and no tick chef needed. You watch the brew bubble slowly, filling the air with a scent that could convince you to stay awake just 10 more minutes. Maybe. Historians still debate whether these early brewers understood the chemistry or just followed the goats. Either way, what you're watching is the quiet invention of modern portability. Not wheels, not swords, but hot liquid in a pot under the sky in the palm of a wanderer. Now, with the sun still just peeking over the ridge, sets out on his path. You follow. Now, no rush, no fanfare. Now, just a quiet footsteps. And the warmth of coffee in the air. Now, the trail dips, then rises, then curves as if it can't decide whether to be easy or honest. Moves steadily, his kit slung on his back, secured with leather cord and a bit of hope. You follow close behind, not so much to see where he's going, but to feel how he moves through a world that doesn't ask permission to be ancient. Around him, travelers pass in both directions. One group carries clay jars filled with honey wine. Another walks silently with baskets of salt, arms wrapped in dyed wool. A few nod at. One man recognizes the shape of his coffee pot and lifts his own slightly like a toast, but without spilling. You catch a cultural detail in the moment. Some travelers wrapped their coffee tools in embroidered cloth, stitched with family symbols and protective charms. Function met identity. You didn't just carry your coffee, you carried your people. A pauses under a tree shade dappling the dirt like old coin rubbings and takes out a small carved cup. He doesn't drink yet. Instead, he leans his head back listening, not to birds, not to wind, but to the silence that tells him he's still on time. The beans he uses today came from his neighbor's trees. There's no money exchanged, just a trade of dried goat cheese and a promise to share the brew if it's good. Coffee here isn't a product. It's a conversation that hasn't happened yet. Your historical fact: in traditional Ethiopian culture, coffee isn't consumed alone. It's a ritual, a ceremony often involving 3 rounds of serving from strong to soft. Each cup has meaning, time slows, community gathers. Even now, in its most mobile form, the ritual tugs gently on its roots. He grinds his midday portion. The sound is soft, gritty, almost like sandpaper sighing. He boils it again in the same soot-blackened pot. No filter, no timer, just patience and ash. Oh, and now he drinks. Well, one slow sip, then another. Oh, he doesn't smile exactly, but his eyes stop squinting. If historians still debate whether Ethiopia's coffee practices influenced early Islamic rituals of wakefulness, or if the influence flowed the other way. Either way, what began in the highlands traveled faster than most empires. Well, the cup is emptied. The pot is cooled. Well, the path continues. And so do I, sleepier than before, maybe. But wide awake in history's footsteps. You walk a little slower now. Not from tiredness exactly, but because the world here moves at the pace of breath, deep, unhurried breath, the kind that fills your ribs without asking first. The landscape spreads wide, rolling hills ripple like a paused sea. Every now and then, a lone acacia tree punctuates the view, twisting toward the sky like it's trying to remember something. You follow a path that's older than it looks, carved not by boots, but by generations of hooves, sandals, and quiet purpose. The stops at a trading post. It's not much, just a cluster of thatched huts, a shade cloth strung between sticks, and a pile of millet bags that double as seating. But here, news is traded faster than goods. One man has fresh honeycomb. Another tells a story about a lion that learned to yawn like a man. Your historical fact: Ethiopian highland communities functioned as decentralized yet tightly connected networks of clan-based societies, often centered around seasonal travel routes like this one. Coffee became a shared language, part of greetings, farewells, and informal agreements. Sits, no rush, no menu, he unwraps his. A few nearby traders notice immediately. One taps a companion. Soon a circle forms, small, unspoken, expectant. There's no ceremony music, no incense, just the scent of ground beans and the sound of kindling crackling. He begins the brew again, familiar steps, deliberate movements, not performance but care. A cultural tidbit drifts in on the smoke. Early travelers sometimes dropped a single pebble into the pot to ground their brew spiritually and physically. Doesn't. But you notice him flick away a stray leaf with the kind of reverence people usually reserve for holy books. Someone offers bread, flat, dense, dotted with cumin seeds. Another hands over dried figs. A young boy carries a wooden bowl of cool water cradled like an offering. Historians still debate how formalized the early coffee gatherings were. Were they planned rituals or spontaneous moments of human gravity? The line is thin, like the steam curling from the lip of a clay pot. You drink a too. It's earthy, bitter, clean, and quietly heroic. Though this isn't coffee to impress, it's coffee that remembers where it came from. You sit in the shade, warm cup in hand, surrounded by strangers who said nothing, but shared everything. And for a moment, you forget the concept of time. Though the stars come slowly. Not like fireworks, not like city lights. Though they arrive the way soft thoughts do, drifting, patient, asking nothing. You and make camp on a rocky outcrop, wrapped in worn wool cloaks and the hush that follows a long walk. A small fire dances in a circle of stones. The night doesn't chill, it settles like a hand on your shoulder. Tonight's historical fact: the earliest recorded references to Ethiopian coffee come not from written texts, but from oral storytelling passed through generations of Gala and Oromo peoples, where caffeine was part ritual, part energy source, part quiet bond. Don takes out the kit again, of course he does. Even now beneath starlight it has a place. The beans are already roasted. He did that this morning using a flat metal pan and a rhythm so smooth it felt like music. Now he grinds a handful on a flat stone, soft, measured circles. Not because he's craving caffeine, but because it's what comes next. The fire pops, sparks drift up and vanish like polite interruptions. A cultural whisper finds its way to you. In some Ethiopian regions, people brewed late-night coffee not for energy but protection, believing the aroma warded off evil spirits. Not by scaring them, but by reminding them that someone was awake, aware, and cared enough to boil water in the dark. You sip again, it's stronger this time, but gentler too. Like the flavor knows it doesn't need to prove anything. It hums a melody. You don't recognize it, but your bones seem to. Maybe it's a song about harvest, or rain, or maybe it's just what people hum when they feel less alone under the sky. And historians still debate whether the rise of coffee culture was spiritual first or practical. But sitting here, watching steam curl into starlight, it feels like the answer is both. So you lie back. The fire flickers lower. And in the silence that follows a warm drink in a cool night, you begin to understand why this isn't just a beverage. It's a ritual of remembering. And you're part of it now. Morning unfolds slowly, like parchment warmed by the sun. The air is cool at first, then sweet with dew. Somewhere nearby, a goat bleats, not urgently, just as a reminder that life continues even when you're not looking. You sit up on your mat, stiff but peaceful. The fire is out. The coals whisper their farewells in a language made of ash. It is already awake, of course he is. He's at the edge of the slope, grinding more beans. You blink once, twice. Then you realize he's not doing it for himself this time, he's doing it for you. Your historical fact for this morning: coffee in Ethiopia was traditionally brewed 3 times per session, and each cup lighter, more symbolic than the last. The third was believed to carry blessings. It wasn't just caffeine, it was communion. Now you accept the first round in silence. It's the strongest, smoky, dense. It hums through your chest like a distant drum, not a pounding one, just a low, steady beat that says you're still here. Around you, the world stretches. A farmer passes by with baskets on a donkey's back. A girl skips across the slope holding a bundle of mint. Somewhere behind the trees, a river glints like someone spilled silver across the land. It's a quiet cultural detail. In some communities, children were taught to roast beans by scent alone, not by sight or time. They learned when the coffee was ready by its aroma. If you could master that, you were said to be ready for marriage or at least polite company. And hands you the second cup. This one is thinner, smoother, the kind of drink that doesn't demand attention but still lingers. You sip, watching the sky brighten behind a line of trees that look like old men shrugging. Historians still debate whether the original coffee ceremony was religious or just naturally reverent. But it doesn't really matter, does it? Some rituals are sacred because they've never needed a name. Now you hear a laugh in the distance, not yours, but it lands like one. So then the final cup. Now doesn't speak when he gives it to you. He just sets it down on a flat stone and nods. It's the smallest cup, but the quietest one too. Now you finish it slowly, and something in your body unclenches. Now you're walking again, not because you have to, but because it feels like the right thing to do after coffee. The path bends now, curving through a denser thicket of trees. The ground is damp, and the roots form patterns like ancient runes, messages you're not meant to decipher, only to notice. Walks ahead of you, his gait steady, as if he's following music you can't quite hear yet. Now to today's historical fact. By the 15th century, Ethiopian coffee practices had spread eastward into Yemen, where Sufi mystics adopted the drink to sustain themselves during late-night spiritual rituals. The beans crossed the Red Sea not in conquest, but in prayer. But in this moment, the only ritual is walking, and the occasional pause to retie a sandal or hand a fig to a passing boy. You reach a small village around midday. It's perched on a hillside, round houses with thatched roofs forming a gentle spiral. Smoke curls from chimneys. Children chase a hoop down a path that curves like a river. Knows someone here, he always knows someone. You're led to a shaded courtyard, where a woman with a sky blue shawl greets you with a smile that doesn't ask questions. She already has the pot on. The coffee kit is different, clay etched with flowers, the handle wound in copper wire. But the steps are the same. Grind, heat, pour, waits. A cultural curiosity flickers into view. In some households, there was passed down like an heirloom and was said to carry the wisdom of every brew it had ever made. The more blackened the clay, the more respected the pot. The woman serves the coffee without formality but with care. You sip. It's smoother than floral almost. Maybe jasmine, maybe just kindness. A rooster strolls past. No one stops him. Historians still debate whether the spread of coffee in Ethiopia was organic or orchestrated by early trade guilds. But here, you feel no marketing, just presence. You stay a little longer than planned. The second cup arrives without asking. A baby laughs in the house next door. And somewhere behind your ribs, a kind of stillness sets in. Not sleep, but something very close. As afternoon light slants across the hills like spilled tea, warm, golden, almost careless in how beautiful it is. You leave the village slowly, as if the ground itself might ask you to stay just one more hour, but is already a few steps ahead, waving casually over his shoulder. You follow. The path narrows again, weaving between rocks and shrubs and the occasional goat who believes it owns the trail, and maybe it does. The air smells of sun-warmed dust and faintly of cardamom. Someone nearby must be cooking. Today's historical fact: Ethiopian coffee, even in its earliest forms, was sometimes brewed with spices like cardamom, cinnamon, or even cloves, especially during festivals or guest ceremonies. It wasn't about masking the flavor. It was about layering meaning. As the sun climbs higher, you begin to hear something new. Not voices, not footsteps, a rhythm. It's a mortar. A woman stands beneath a tree, rhythmically pounding something in a long wooden cylinder. The sound echoes gently through the valley, approaches her like an old friend, which naturally she is. She's preparing beans not for herself but for someone expected tomorrow. She roasts them first in a round metal pan held over embers. You watch the beans go from green to tan to deep, oiled brown. The scent rises. It catches you by the collar and pulls you toward it. A strange cultural detail. Some Ethiopian families would offer roasted beans to ancestors by placing a few near the threshold of their home. Not as superstition, just respect. Memory roasted. You sit beneath the tree while the woman grinds her beans. The sound is hypnotic, stone against seed, past against present. She chats within low tones. You catch only a few words, but they feel kind, familiar. She offers you a cup smaller than usual. No sugar, no milk, just warmth. Historians still debate whether the communal nature of Ethiopian coffee culture helped bind its early political systems together, or whether it simply made living together more bearable. Either way, this moment, under the tree, with the pounding echoing softly and the cup warm in your hand, feels like one of those truths that doesn't require a footnote. While you drink, the birds don't stop singing. Neither does the mortar. And everything somehow feels in balance. While you rest beneath the stars again. But tonight there's more laughter. A campfire crackles beside a shallow riverbed and someone has brought a flute. The notes rise and fall like a lullaby written for the hills themselves. Lounges nearby, his pack used as a pillow, arms folded behind his head. Though the sky is impossibly clear. No clouds, just a ceiling of light spread wide and patient. Your historical fact for tonight. Ethiopian monks were among the earliest documented cultivators of coffee, using it not only for stamina during long prayers, but as a meditative aid, believing that the act of brewing was itself a form of devotion. Tonight it's just pieces. No politics, no trade, no maps. Prepares a final brew not because it's needed, but because it's how the day ends. You notice how even the way he holds the pot has changed since yesterday. Slower, with more reverence. Or maybe it's you who's changed, watching with new eyes. He doesn't grind the beans this time, just cracks them lightly with a smooth rock. The result is a thinner, gentler drink, not bold, not sharp, just enough to feel remembered. It's a soft cultural echo. Some believed coffee made at night helped dreams flow more clearly. It wasn't about sleep prevention, it was about emotional clarity. The kind of clarity that only arrives when you're listening deeply and expecting nothing. While you sip under the stars. No ceremony, no story. Just the taste of something old, something earned. Historians still debate when coffee left Ethiopia and became global currency. Trade, conquest, pilgrimage, accident. The truth is probably all of them. But tonight none of that matters. You hear the flute again, drifting on the breeze. You feel the earth beneath your blankets. You breathe, and somewhere inside your chest, a silence settles, a good one. The kind that means you'll sleep well. And dream deeply. Morning arrives like an old friend who doesn't knock. Just slips in, opens the shutters, and starts making tea. You're already half awake when the birds begin. Not one, not two, but a small army of feathered percussionists, each with a slightly different opinion on how morning should sound. It's oddly comforting. Is stirring the embers. Of course he is, he doesn't speak. He just gestures to the water pot and the faint curl of smoke. You nod, no words needed. You've learned the rhythm now. Your historical fact. In early Ethiopian monasteries, coffee was sometimes brewed communally before dawn, shared among monks who prayed through the night. It became a ritual of unity, silence, prayer, then coffee. Not in that order, but always in that spirit. Now today, the coffee is simpler, fewer steps, fewer spices, just heat and habit. You sip slowly. The flavor is sharper this morning, more direct. Notices and shrugs, then says, the fire was hotter, so the brew is honest. You make a mental note, honest coffee. There's probably a t-shirt in that, but it's too early to be clever. It's a small cultural gem. There were beliefs in some regions that the shape of the steam rising from a pot could predict how the journey ahead would go. If it curled, travel was safe. If it rose straight and vanished, best to wait. You watch the steam curl lazily sideways, safe enough. It packs the kit. It's almost muscle memory now. Tie the cord, pat the pouch, sling it over the shoulder. You help this time, wrapping the stone grinder carefully in cloths. You walk a little lighter now, not faster, just with less resistance. You remember the first time he brewed coffee under the stars. You didn't understand it then, not really. Now the silence between the sips says more than the words ever did. The trail bends toward a ridge, and as you crest it, the land unfolds below. A wide green basin where the trees grow closer together and the air tastes like moss and eucalyptus. Down there is one of the oldest and most storied coffee regions in Ethiopia. And yes, is going there, because someone has asked for his beans. Not to buy, to barter, maybe to brew together. You never quite get the details, but it doesn't matter. Your historical fact today. The Kingdom of was one of the 5 jibe states in southwestern Ethiopia, a center of coffee production as early as the 18th century. Local rulers once controlled the trade routes that carried beans eastward, often using coffee as currency, tribute, or diplomatic gift. As you descend the ridge, the breeze carries the scent of green coffee, fresh, not roasted. The trees here aren't farmed in neat rows. They grow the way they want, tangled, tall, stubborn. Coffee plants blend into the forest like they belong to no one. You pass a grove where women are picking cherries, their baskets swinging at their hips. They laugh, sing softly, argue about something that ends in laughter again. The sound feels older than language. You stop at a clearing where a man with a weathered face is roasting beans in a wide, shallow dish. He fans the smoke with a reed mat, humming under his breath. You recognize the steps now. He's not hurrying. He's preparing to share. As a charming cultural note, some elders believed that the first cup offered to a guest determined the tone of the entire meeting. If it was strong, so was the friendship. If it was bitter, well, maybe best to reschedule. Well, the man serves you without asking your name, just a gesture to sit, a clay cup, a nod. While you drink, it is, frankly, excellent. And in that sip, you realize this isn't a detour. Well, this is the destination. The walkings, the brewings, the sharings. Historians still debate whether Ethiopia's coffee culture was shaped more by trade or terrain. But here, in shadow, surrounded by trees that have never been told what to do, it feels like the coffee shaped itself. The forest deepens, not darker, just quieter. The kind of quiet that feels earned, like the land has been whispering for so long it finally ran out of things to say. You and walk single file now. The trees rise higher. Ferns crowd the edges of the path and vines dangle like tired scribbles in the air. The ground softens underfoot, damp with yesterday's rain. He stops beneath a wide-leafed canopy and unties the coffee kit again. Of course he does. Your historical fact. In wild coffee forests like those near and ancient groves were sometimes left intentionally undisturbed, not farmed, not pruned, because they were considered sacred. People believed the oldest coffee trees held memories, not figuratively, literally. You didn't pick from them without permission. Sometimes you didn't pick from them at all. Doesn't roast beans this time. He has some ready. Instead, he builds a small fire from palm fronds and dry bark. The flames are low, but the smoke rises with dignity. A curious little detail. In some villages, coffee grounds were mixed with ash and left at the base of specific trees as offerings, either to spirits or to the tree itself. It wasn't about superstition. It was about reciprocity. You don't take without giving. The pot boils slower in this forest. The fire behaves differently. You wonder if even the elements respect the space. The cup he hands you this time is rounder with a small chip on the side. You like it more for the flaw. The brew is earthy, almost savory. You taste bark, rain, memory. So sits back, arms on his knees, watching the pot like it might say something. While you sit beside him, sip, and don't speak. Historians still debate whether these ancient forests were managed or simply revered into survival. Either way, they remain. You lean back against a moss-covered rock and exhale. Not because you're tired, but because this place gives you permission to. As evening comes early beneath the canopy, you dream of footsteps on soft soil, and when you wake, they're still there. The forest is alive with morning movement, slow and considerate. A monkey leaps from branch to branch with a kind of casual elegance. Somewhere, a bird calls out 3 notes, like a question you don't need to answer. This is already boiling water. Not grinding, not roasting, just boiling. Today's coffee will be a blend of yesterday's strength and today's patience. Your historical fact. By the 16th century, coffee had begun its journey out of Ethiopia, not through empire but through quiet caravans, Sufi orders, and sea winds. It made its way to Yemen, then across the Islamic world, but it never left Ethiopia, not really. Here it remains not as export but as ritual. Pours the first cup and sets it in front of you on a flat stone. You drink before speaking. The brew is familiar now, warm, grounding, slightly bitter with a soft finish. like a friend who tells the truth and then hugs you after. Now you ask where you're going today, shrugs and says downhill toward markets. So that's all you need to know. It's a cultural thread, quiet but persistent. Some believed that coffee brewed at sunrise helped align your intentions for the day. Not as a charm, but as clarity. You didn't drink to wake up. You drank to choose your direction. You help pack up camp. The routine is second nature now. You know where the stones go. You fold the cloth just right. And when you begin walking, it's not as a guest anymore. Now you are part of the rhythms. A part of the kids. A part of the journey. The forest thins by midday, giving way to soft slopes dotted with huts and terraced gardens. You see children playing with wooden wheels, women drying clothes on low hedges, and men sipping from wide bowls, leaning into each other like punctuation marks. You're getting closer to the market town of, nestled in the green heart of. The scent of spice and roasting grain carries on the wind. You pass 2 donkeys painted with red clay swirls, and a man selling bundles of sage that smell sharper than smoke. Your historical fact is one of the oldest towns associated with wild coffee cultivation, situated deep in the region. Even today, the surrounding forests are home to some of the last remaining patches of truly wild coffee varieties. The market is alive but unhurried. No one shouts. No one haggles loudly. People trade with gestures and short sentences, pausing between transactions as if they're mid-conversation with the land itself. Finds his spot beneath a faded awning. He lays out 2 bundles, dried coffee cherries and roasted beans. A few nod. One touches the edge of the with respect before kneeling to smell the beans. You're handed a wooden bowl of fresh brew made by someone else this time. It's thinner, smokier, a different method, a different fire, but still familiar. It's a cultural note worth pausing for. Ethiopian coffee ceremonies often end with burning incense, not as a religious act but as closure. Smoke curls into the sky as a sign the ritual is complete, the host has honored you, and the moment can now rest. Someone burns myrrh nearby. The scent lifts above the market like a sigh. You sip watching women grind spices with 2 stones and a rhythm older than the town. Historians still debate whether wild coffee forests were preserved intentionally or simply forgotten by traders focused on faster-growing crops. But standing here with smoke in your lungs and warmth in your hands, it's clear. Some things don't survive because we protect them. They survive because we keep showing up. One sip at a time. You sit for hours in. Not out of necessity, but because the day bends that way. The market slowly exudes its rhythm. Merchants shifting baskets, children darting between stalls, the occasional goat passing judgment on everyone. Chats quietly with an older woman selling bundles of dried grass. Their exchange is more smiles than words. You're sipping your 3rd cup of the day now. This one has a hint of something floral, maybe jasmine, maybe not, you don't ask. some flavors aren't meant to be named. Your historical fact. The traditional Ethiopian coffee ceremony has 3 rounds, and each round is brewed from the same set of beans, getting progressively lighter in taste and stronger in meaning. The final round literally means blessing. You're starting to realize the ceremony isn't about coffee. It's about time. About not rushing. About staying long enough that your presence becomes part of the furniture. A small cultural nugget. Some rural Ethiopian homes keep a specific seat, often a small, 3-legged stool for the coffee guest. Not for the most important person, just for the one who stays, the one who listens. A man with a white shawl joins the stall beside and unrolls a cloth of beans. He examines batch, nods once, then pours some into his palm. They talk and you catch the words cloud roast. Apparently the beans were dried in sun filtered through fog. That's a thing. Of course it is. Historians still debate whether such drying techniques were deliberate or just a result of elevation and climate. Either way, the flavor speaks for itself. Soft, smoky, with a story. Well, you don't live yet. Well, why would you? Well, there's shade, there's silence, there's coffee. And then there's the slow hum of something sacred disguised as ordinary. Later that evening, the town begins to quiet. Shutters close, lanterns are lit. Smoke from tiny hearths rises into a sky turning violet. You find yourself back at the stall, though the beans are mostly gone now. The has been rinsed and rests upside down on a cloth like a sleeping turtle. No more guests, just the 2 of you. He nods toward the pouch and raises his eyebrows as if to ask, shall we? You nod. The one last cup. The final. Your historical fact. Ethiopian oral tradition holds that the spirit of coffee is not in the bean but in the brewing. The act of transformation, the heat, the timing, the patience is where the power lives, not the product, the process. Brews slow. You watch steam rise, curling into the dark like soft questions left unanswered. He hands you your cup, the chipped one from before. You hold it between your palms as the night presses closer. A gentle cultural practice. Some families pass down one particular brewing pot through generations, never washed with soap, only rinsed with water and respect. They believe the flavor carries memory. Each brew echoes the last. Each sip is a kind of inheritance. While you drink, the coffee is quiet tonight. Not weak, just tired in a good way. Like it too has walked these trails and listened to these stories. Historians still debate whether the endurance of Ethiopian coffee culture stems from its isolation, its ritual, or its taste. But as you sit beside a man who said maybe 50 words all day, and still made you feel entirely seen, you start to suspect the answer is simpler. The ritual isn't about coffee. It's about staying human, one warm, honest cup at a time. You leave with the sun still low, just a shimmer along the tops of the acacia trees, like someone softly tugged a golden thread across the sky. The town exhales behind you, quiet and slow, already steeping in its next pot of morning. That doesn't speak for the first mile. He's chewing on a twig of something sharp-smelling, some local plant used for breath or digestion or boredom. Hard to say, you're too sleepy to ask. You're back on the road. Your historical fact. In parts of Ethiopia, dried coffee cherries were brewed as tea long before roasted coffee became the norm. It's lighter, more floral, and was often used in fasting periods or during long journeys. A traveling drink, something that moved. Now today, shares. He produces a small pouch from his satchel and spoons the dried cherry skins into boiling water, along with a sliver of cinnamon bark. It tastes like sunrise feels. Bright, sweet, and oddly determined. You sip as the hills roll gently forward, the dirt underfoot warm and forgiving. You pass a herd of cows moving with the same sluggish authority as royalty. The herder waves, eyes half shut, you get it. It's a quiet cultural note. It's common in some villages to leave the first pour of on the earth as a greeting to the road. Not a prayer, just manners. Does exactly that, pours a small splash from the pot onto the ground and nods. Then refills your cup. Historians still debate whether originated as a separate tradition or a transitional one part of the evolution from tea to coffee. But to your tongue it feels like a sibling. Softer, wiser. You keep walking. The world smells of bark, citrus, and dust. And with every step, the journey begins to taste less like living and more like returning. By midday, the heat arrives. Not aggressively, just insistently, like a cat on your chest that refuses to move. You stop under a lone fig tree on the edge of a rocky bluff. Below, a dry riverbed curves like a sleeping snake through the valley. Someone once walked that path with full buckets. Today, it's empty. You set down your pack and stretch, bones cracking like twigs. I'll bruise again. You don't even question it now. It's what happens when you stop. Like untying your shoes or sighing after a long sentence. Your historical fact. Nomadic groups in Ethiopia, such as the Oromo, once carried ground coffee mixed with fat rolled into small balls as a kind of early energy snack. It was dense, portable, and caffeine-rich. A medieval protein bar minus the branding. Today's brew is darker, richer. The beans were roasted longer this time and you can taste it. Smoky, almost, you make a face, grins. He says that's coffee that remembers something. You nod even though you're not sure what. It's a charming detail from the highlands. Some storytellers refused to begin a tale until the first sip of coffee had been taken by everyone in the room. The logic, no story deserves to be told on an empty throat. So you sit and sip and wait for a story that never quite comes, but feels like it could at any moment. The breeze kicks up dust along the river's edge. A hawk circles once, then vanishes behind a hill. Historians still debate whether coffee evolved as a drink of motion or of pause, of travel or of settlement. Here, under this fig tree with your knees crossed and your cup half full, the answer seems obvious. It was both. It always has been. You reach the next village just as the air begins to cool, that perfect temperature where everything, your breath, your thoughts, your spine, seems to settle into place. This village is smaller than the last. Fewer huts, more goats. A child runs by with one shoe and no concern, dragging a stick along the ground like it owes him money. A woman waves from a doorway, then disappears again, leaving behind the scent of roasting grains and wood smoke. Now knows someone here, of course he does. You sit beneath a low awning made from woven reeds and stitched cloth. A kettle appears, almost magically, and begins to hiss. Your historical fact: in many Ethiopian villages, coffee was and still is the centerpiece of conflict resolution. Neighbors with disputes will sometimes sit down for a full ceremony before any discussion happens. You can't argue over bitterness with bitterness on your tongue. That's the logic. Coffee, then clarity. The woman hosting today is maybe 60, maybe 80, it's hard to tell. She wears a scarf with frayed edges and moves like someone who's seen more than she says. She doesn't ask if you want coffee. She just starts brewing. It's the same question as do you want to breathe? The beans this time are roasted with cardamom. It's unexpected and lingers in your nose. You like it. You pretend you knew it was coming, doesn't call you out. A lesser-known cultural gem. In some regions, the spent coffee grounds are used to predict fortunes, stirred in water and poured onto a plate to watch the patterns. The results are vague. But then again, so is the future. You drink, the first round is hot and full. The second, gentler. The third, familiar, now your friend. Historians still debate whether coffee fueled diplomacy or just softened it. But here, in this quiet village, where even the goats seem to nod in agreement, it feels like a treaty in a cup. The next morning, before the sun rises, you hear laughter. Not loud, not sharp, just warm. The woman from the day before is already grinding beans by hand, singing under her breath. Is beside her, helping without helping, offering water, adjusting coals, keeping time with his silence. You sit nearby, still wrapped in your shawl, watching like it's. And it is just without the drama. Your historical fact: coffee grinding stones, some thousands of years old, have been found in ancient Ethiopian highland settlements, suggesting early use long before written records began. Not all were used for beans, but some had grooves so smooth they could only have come from repeated motion. Now the smell of roasting is deeper this time, less sweet, more rooted, like the village itself. You're given the first cup without asking. It tastes earthy, almost heavy, like the smoke has woven itself into the brew. You're not sure if that's intentional or just a happy accident. Either way, you don't mind. It's a curious tradition. In some households, coffee is brewed with a small lump of salt added during the second round. not for preservation, just for balance. As if to remind your tongue that life isn't always sweet, and that's part of the point. I'll use a sip. The salt is there, barely, but it works. Raises his cup toward the sky just slightly. Not a toast, just acknowledgement. You copy him. Historians still debate whether these small, subtle variations in ceremony are remnants of tribal identity or simple regional preference. But to you, they feel like dialects, different ways of saying the same beautiful thing. As the sky turns pale pink and the village begins to stretch awake, you finish your cup. And it feels quietly, unquestionably, like you've been welcomed into something very old. Not as a visitor, but as someone who stayed long enough to deserve the second round. The forest dims with a slow, contented exhale. There's no rush to darkness, just a dimming, a softening, as if even the sun agrees that this part of the world deserves a gentler goodbye. Tonight, you rest beneath a woven shelter, just large enough for two, barely taller than a man, but more than enough. The rain comes gently, tapping leaves in a pattern too complex to memorize. Hums again, a different tune this time, slower, almost sorrowful. It winds between the trees like smoke. You don't ask about it. Some melodies aren't meant to be explained. Your historical fact, the word coffee itself likely originates from the Ethiopian region that claims to be its birthplace, but other regions contest this. Even no one agrees, and honestly, no one needs to. The roots are shared even if the names differ. You sip again. The coffee tonight is thin, mellow, almost like tea. The third round, again. It feels more like ritual now, even if no one says so. A cultural whisper from the shadows. Some communities believed that falling asleep after the third cup would bring dreams of ancestors or distant places you were meant to visit. Not exactly prophecy, just gentle direction. Finishes his cup, wipes the rim with his sleeve, and tucks the pot into its pouch. Even the act of packing it away feels sacred now, as if you've both entered a rhythm that doesn't end when the fire does. You lie down. The stars above the trees blink slowly into place. And beneath the hush of ancient leaves and roasted memory, you let yourself drift. Not to escape, but to listen just a little longer with your eyes closed. You leave the village with a pouch of beans tied neatly in cloth, gifted, not sold. Tucks it away in his satchel like it's something sacred, which, at this point, you don't question. The path today is flatter, dusty. You pass eucalyptus trees shedding long, ribbon-like leaves and the occasional crumbling stone shrine, so old it's hard to tell if it was ever finished or simply eroded back into mystery. Your historical fact. Some of the earliest monastic communities in Ethiopia, like those around Lake, used coffee not just as nourishment, but as a spiritual aid. Long nights of prayer were accompanied by long pots of brew. In silence, the monks sipped and read by candlelight. Walks with one hand on the tide to his belt like it might suddenly float away. He doesn't speak much today. Just walks with the kind of patience people lose when they buy plane tickets. By midday, you reach a high ridge with wind like a whispered warning. While you stop, he unties the pouch. You know what's coming. This brew is different, lighter, with crushed cloves. The wind carries the scent ahead of you. Somewhere, a cow lifts its head like it's been summoned. It's a quiet note. In certain rural weddings, a pot of coffee is brewed during the vows, not as a toast but as witness. It's poured and shared immediately after the ceremony, sealing the union with steam and spice. You drink with the ridge before you, the wind behind you and by your side. Neither of you says much. You don't have to. Historians still debate how early coffee became entwined with religious ritual in Ethiopia, whether it was formal or just tradition ossified by repetition. But you sip now and understand. Some rituals don't start with belief. They start with warmth. And they stay because they work. As evening stretches its long, pink fingers across the sky, you descend into a valley full of wild shrubs and black volcanic stone. Though the air feels thicker here, not unpleasant, just older, like breath that's been held for centuries. You pass a collapsed stone wall. A goat stands on it looking judgmental. You nod in greeting. It blinks in disappointment. Goats are never satisfied. You make camp near a slow, winding stream. Sets down his satchel and crouches by the water, cupping it with both hands like a child trying not to spill anything important. Tonight's brew is simple. No spice, no song. Just beans roasted dark and ground coarse boiled 3 times. Your historical fact. This triple boiling method, often seen in Ethiopia's region, creates a brew so strong it was once jokingly called liquid night. Travelers claimed it could keep them awake through storms, bandits, or family reunions. While you're handed your cup, you take it with both hands. It's bitter, but it's honest. And somehow that's better than sweet. It's a curious little echo from tradition. When someone dies, a coffee pot is often placed outside the home, brewed and steaming, so their spirit doesn't feel forgotten. It's not for mourning. It's for hospitality, even in departure. You sip beside the stream, the night folding in like soft linen. Hums a single note, held too long to be accidental. You let it carry you. Historians still debate whether coffee's role in funerary customs was symbolic or purely communal. But in this moment, it feels like a reminder. That warmth should never die with a person. It should live in the cup passed forward. The brew handed down. The story told without needing to be believed. And the silence you share with someone who didn't need to ask why you stopped walking. You continue along the winding trail, the late afternoon sun leaning low like a tired companion, casting elongated shadows that merge with the soft curves of the land. The path, now bordered by scrubby bushes and scattered stones, feels like the spine of a well-worn book, each step a page turned toward a story you're slowly absorbing. Walks ahead in gentle silence, his pace unhurried, as if each step has been rehearsed over centuries. Your kettle clinks as you both cross a small wooden footbridge that creaks in a friendly, if slightly sarcastic, greeting, "Hello, old friend." It seems to say as if it's been through these crossings before. In the background, a light breeze carries the scent of wild mint and the faintest hint of juniper, mingling with the lingering aroma of coffee that you still taste on your lips. It is a moment that reminds you of modern travel essentials, like a power bank for your soul, but without the buzzing neon lights. Now, today's historical fact. By the 15th century, the portable coffee kit had evolved into an essential accessory for Ethiopian travelers, helping to sustain long journeys across rugged terrain. The intricate design of the kit, featuring a small, handcrafted, a compact mortar, and a set of finely carved wooden utensils, becomes a symbol not of luxury, but of practicality and resilience. These items were passed down between kin, much like a cherished smartphone in today's world, revered not for its dazzling screen, but for its reliable service. A small cultural tidbit surfaces as you climb a gentle slope. In some isolated hamlets, travelers would wrap their coffee kits in embroidered cloth adorned with protective symbols believed to ward off misfortune. The detail is as whimsical as it is practical, an early mix of art and utility. Perhaps it was their version of installing a security app on your phone, though decidedly more personal and steeped in folklore. As you reach an open plateau, the horizon stretches out in a quilt of dusty browns and deep greens, and you pause to sip from a refillable cup produced from the kit. The brew is now cooler, with a flavor that hints at the journey itself, a touch of earthiness mixed with the crisp promise of new beginnings. You chuckle inwardly. It's as if the coffee is winking at you, saying, "I've traveled farther than your latest app update." As historians still debate whether the portability of these coffee kits was primarily driven by economic necessity or by the pure, unyielding joy of exploration. The truth, like the aroma rising from your cup, is rich, layered, and perhaps meant to be savored quietly. It points towards a narrow path leading down into a valley where the terrain appears dotted with small, scattered huts. There, you sense that the day is winding down into a gentle evening ritual, a prelude to rest rather than a rush to the next adventure. The soft murmur of voices drifting up from the valley, carried on the breeze, feels like a lullaby made of distant memories and well-trodden routes. You walk the last few paces along the plateau, letting the calm of the open space fill you. The world here is ordinary yet steeped in quiet magnificence, where each crack in the earth and every whispered breeze is a note in an ancient lullaby. Your mind, lulled by the steadiness of the terrain and the ritual of your coffee, drifts between the here and the then. With a final glance at the retreating sun, you feel grateful. A traveler not only in space but in time, holding a piece of history in every sip. The day's journey, with its light jokes, unspoken camaraderie, and simple acts of perseverance, is carried forward like a well-loved memory, ready to be steeped again in the night. As the chill of twilight settles in, You and descend into the valley, where the landscape becomes a gentle mosaic of soft earth and fading light. The path here is lined with low, flowering shrubs and clusters of wild grasses that sway in a calm evening breeze, as if they're in tune with a distant, gentle song. The tranquility of this descent feels like the quiet closing of a cherished chapter in a book you once knew by heart. Your steps slow, mirroring the rhythm of the diminishing day. You notice a curious detail, an abandoned stone well covered in delicate carvings that tell forgotten stories of ancestors who gathered here long ago. It sparks a thought about continuity, the way one's footsteps join those of many who have walked this same path before, each adding a faint echo to the collective memory of the land. And today's historical fact offers a resonant note. The portability of the coffee kit not only revolutionized personal travel in ancient Ethiopia, but also fostered communal exchanges along trade routes, binding different peoples together over shared rituals of coffee brewing. These kits were not merely objects, they were social tokens. With every journey, a traveler's kit carried both sustenance and the silent promise of hospitality, bridging communities with the simple, universal language of warmth in a cup. You pause at a weathered milestone, its inscription barely legible, and feel a subtle kinship with those names enshrined in stone. A reminder that your journey is as much about connectivity as it is about adventure. A wry thought crosses your mind. If these milestones could talk, they might ask if you've ever updated your GPS. You smile at the modern irony as ancient stones observe silently. A notable cultural whisper accompanies your descent. In some remote villages, it was customary to leave a portion of one's brewed coffee near a communal fire at dusk as a token of thanks to the spirits of the earth. This offering, humble and unpretentious, was believed to ensure safe travels for those yet to come. It seems an apt gesture, like leaving a whispered goodnight to the ground below. If ever the quiet guide gathers a few dried coffee beans and sets them aside in a small pouch, it is his way of marking the passage of the day, a mini ceremony of gratitude. You, too, feel an impulse to take note of this subtle act, recognizing it as another thread in the tapestry of shared ritual that makes every journey a story in itself. In the diminishing light, the valley reveals its gentle details. The echo of distant laughter, the soft shuffle of nocturnal creatures stirring in the underbrush, and the steady murmur of a nearby stream that winds its way like a contemplative thought. You lean against a smooth, cool rock and savor your final cup for the day. A brew that now carries the delicate balance of spice and earth, imbued with the promise of night's embrace. Historians still debate whether these communal coffee rituals were catalysts for larger cultural exchanges or simply the everyday poetry of rural life. The answer, you suspect, might be a blend of both, like coffee itself, complex and unhurried, transcending a single flavor or moment. As you sip, you feel a gentle fatigue that is not weariness, but rather the contentment of a day well traveled. With the horizon painted in deep purples and soft blues, you allow yourself a moment to breathe deeply, to let go of the day's toils, and to let the peaceful cadence of the valley lull you toward rest. The journey continues in every quiet heartbeat, in every whispered sip of coffee that binds you to the ancient rhythms of the land. And as darkness gently claims the valley, you know that, like every rising sun before it, this evening will nurture the promise of another journey tomorrow. The stars arrive without ceremony, no trumpet, no chorus, just a slow reveal. One by one, as if the sky itself is cautiously lifting a curtain. You lie on your back beside the fire, your head resting on a bundle of cloth that smells faintly of coffee grounds and wood smoke. Somewhere nearby stirs the coals for warmth, not urgency. Above you, the night is impossibly wide. No Wi-Fi, but the signal's perfect if you know how to listen. Your historical fact for this stretch of stars. Some of the oldest known written records about coffee come not from Ethiopia itself, but from travelers and scholars in Yemen who were told stories of its powers by Ethiopian merchants. It's not uncommon for a gift to be better documented by the one who receives it than the one who offers it. Offers no lecture, no toast. He simply hands you a small ceramic cup worn at the rim. Tonight's brew is cooler, a little thinner, maybe even intentional. The point isn't strength now, it's softness. A way to finish the day without interrupting it. A lesser-known tradition floats to mind. In certain Ethiopian highland towns, the third round of coffee is never taken standing up. It must be consumed seated, preferably near someone older than you, not out of obligation, out of rhythm. Also use a sip. I'll use a sip. The fire crackles in small huffs, like it's also settling in for a nap. Finally speaks, just a few words in Amharic too fast to catch, but you understand the tone. It's the sound of someone saying, "Good day, same time tomorrow." Historians still debate the origin of whether the third round was always symbolic, or if it became sacred simply by repetition. But as your last drop cools against the clay, you feel it. There's something holy about anything done gently enough to make the night feel safer. You dream of coffee beans. Not dramatically. They aren't dancing or chanting. They're just there, lined in rows like a library of smells, whispering quietly to each other about roast levels and poorly packed satchels. When you wake, the fire is low, and the sky is turning that strange bruised color that only exists for a few minutes each morning, half violet, half regret. You stretch, bones popping in soft protest. Is already packing. You're not surprised. He leaves the embers behind like breadcrumbs. Now, today's historical fact. Some Ethiopian oral traditions speak of coffee not just as a plant but as a living entity, a companion to the traveler. The beans are not used, they are shared with. In this view, you never really drink coffee alone. As you descend into a forested stretch, you notice how the world smells different here. Greener, ferns stretch across the trail like sleepy cats. Moisture hangs in the air with the weight of a pending thought. Pauses to gather mushrooms. He won't eat them, just likes pointing them out like odd little guests. You find a small stone marker buried halfway in the moss. A name, or maybe just a word, either way you brush it off. The gesture feels respectful. It's a quirky custom from the South. In some communities, when brewing coffee outdoors, you're supposed to turn the pot 3 times before pouring, once for the ancestors, once for the earth, and once for whoever else is listening. You try it. It feels a bit silly. And then it doesn't. Now, the brew this morning is sharp, more acidic, citrusy. You wince a little, doesn't he's built for this. Historians still debate whether this acidic profile was preferred or just a result of local storage methods. But on your tongue, it wakes something. No, not caffeine. That's something older. Like memory. Like hunger for a thing you didn't know you were missing until just now. The forest gives way to farmland. Terraced fields cut the hills into soft, green steps, and low stone walls stretch like sleepy arms across the landscape. Farmers stoop at odd angles, doing things with tools you can't name but which feel ancient and precise. There is rhythm here. Not music exactly, just the patient percussion of tools, the low murmur of human breath, the occasional cowbell punctuating the air like a sleepy metronome. The waves to a man hauling firewood. No words are exchanged, but something passes between them, recognition without fuss. Your historical fact today: coffee cultivation in Ethiopia is still largely small-scale and family-run, with most farms measuring less than 2 hectares. The beans you've sipped across this journey were likely grown in backyards, not boardrooms. You pause near a field where a woman kneels beside a drying mat, spreading beans out to catch the sun. Each one is inspected, handled, loved a little. She does not hurry. You're reminded of how little modern life allows for slow hands. Today's coffee is sun-warmed, steeped in a clay pot that smells like yesterday's roast and today's patience. The flavor is floral, unexpected, like drinking a memory you didn't know you had. It's obscure tradition. In some rural families, when a child turns 12, they are taught to roast coffee as a rite of passage. Not just the how, but the why. They learn that timing matters, that watching a bean's color shift is like learning someone's face. Hands you pour. Your hands aren't steady, but the cup lands full. That's enough. Historians still debate whether these rites were formal ceremonies or just habits worn into meaning over generations. But standing in a field, cupping something both hot and kind, you start to believe. Maybe meaning doesn't need ceremony. Maybe it just needs time. You enter a town of real ones. The dusty roads turn to cobbled streets, and the scent of livestock is replaced, mostly by that of frying onions and charcoal bread. Market stalls erupt in every color the earth has ever grown. Kids dart past you, grinning with teeth too big for their faces. Nods to a man selling spices, who nods back while negotiating 3 conversations at once. It's loud here, but not aggressively so. The kind of loud that says, yes, things are alive. Today's historical fact might surprise you. The spread of coffee from Ethiopia into Yemen and beyond likely hinged on these very kinds of market towns. Bustling trade centers where beans weren't just sold, but shared, gifted, and tasted among travelers. Ideas move faster with caffeine after all. You wander through the stalls with your cup in hand. Yes, someone already brewed a batch. You didn't see it happen. It was just there. This brew is rich, smoky, with a whisper of cinnamon. It's like the drink knows it has competition and is trying to impress you. It's a cultural nugget to tuck in your pocket. In some towns, fortune tellers use coffee beans in lieu of cards. They scatter 7 roasted beans and read their pattern like stars, interpreting them for love, luck, or whether you should trust your neighbor with your donkey. It's half performance, half prophecy. And people believe just enough. The stops at a stall and trades a few beans for a smile and a small pouch of dried ginger. You suspect the ginger going in your next cup. You don't complain. Yet historians still debate whether coffee was more valuable as a drink or a diplomatic tool. The truth probably depended on who was brewing. But in this town, bustling and humming, the answer feels easy. It was both. Because here, coffee isn't just something you drink. It's something you're part of. You spend the night above the market, in a narrow room that smells faintly of citrus, old wood, and maybe goat. It's hard to tell. The walls are painted the soft blue of worn denim, and the window shutters don't quite close, letting in slices of moonlight that fall across your blanket like quiet silver travelers. He sleeps on the floor not because he has to, but because that's where he's comfortable. You're learning not to argue with comfort, especially not in a place that seems to hum softly even when everyone's asleep. You wake before dawn to the sound of sweeping, brooms against stone, a small orchestra of dust management. Now, today's historical fact feels fitting. In ancient Ethiopian monasteries, monks were known to sweep the paths before sunrise, both to welcome the new day and to symbolically clear the way for the prayers to come. The same could be said for the first coffee brew of the day. Downstairs, the market isn't open yet, but a stall is already steaming. Your cup is handed to you without a word. This time it's blended with a hint of dried lemon peel, sharp, bright, oddly soothing, like someone put sunshine through a strainer. The weird cultural tidbit for your sleepy archive. There's a long-standing belief in certain areas that if your coffee grounds form the shape of a bird, you're due for travel. If it's a goat, expect unexpected guests. If it's neither, well, you probably just need another cup. You check your cup. It looks like a blurry dot that tracks. Finally speaks ready. You don't answer with words, just a nod and a sip. That's the language now. Historians still debate whether these morning brews were tied to religious discipline or simply survival. Maybe both. Or maybe they were just the most reliable part of a day full of unknowns. Either way, this morning feels lighter than the last. As and the road, it's calling again. The path narrows after town. You leave behind chatter and smoke, stepping back into the whisper of trees. It's quieter again, but not empty. Birds sing like they've been waiting for someone to listen, and the wind carries the kind of chill that makes you grateful for hot cups and human company. It doesn't say much today, just hums occasionally. The kind of humming that isn't meant to be heard but leaks out anyway. Today's historical fact is one for the romantics. In parts of Ethiopia, young men once used coffee to signal courtship, sending roasted beans or freshly brewed cups as tokens of affection. If the cup was returned empty and clean, hope lived. If returned untouched, well, time to try poetry or leave town. You sip from a cup he brewed on a rock near a stream. It tastes faintly of cardamom and river air. You joke softly that this might be the perfect wedding proposal. Doesn't laugh, but the corner of his mouth betrays him. Here's a lovely obscure tradition. Some families pass down a single coffee cup across generations, used only for the first brew on the first morning in a new home. It's considered good luck. You wonder what object you've inherited that carries memory like that. An old t-shirt maybe, or a favorite spoon. Historians still debate how much romance was really behind those courtship brews. Some claim it was mostly transactional. Others believe it was the poetry of longing hidden in steam. But as you sit beside the stream, sipping from a cup warmed by shared fire, you start to feel it. That quiet understanding that maybe, just maybe, coffee is the love language of people who don't need many words. And that silence, when it's held gently, can be the most honest form of affection. As the hills start to rise again, nothing dramatic, just enough to remind your legs that gravity exists and it doesn't always root for you. The path winds between tall grasses that sway like they've got secrets. You follow them anyway, the sun warm on your back, the breeze pretending it's a gentle friend and not occasionally a full-body shove. Your kettle swings at your side, clicking with every step. It's become a sort of heartbeat, hasn't it? Today's historical fact nestles nicely into the rhythm. The first written accounts of the Ethiopian coffee ceremony appear in the 16th century, though oral traditions suggest the practice is much older. The ceremony involves roasting, grinding, brewing, and serving the coffee, 3 rounds, each softer than the last. It's not a task, it's a tempo. You find a small clearing under a lone sycamore tree, sets down the kit. Neither of you speak. There's no need to narrate what you've done 50 times already. But this time the coffee is spiced differently, clove, maybe a whisper of black seed. You sip and squint, it tastes like memory. Or like something you should remember but don't. Today's obscure tradition. During wedding week in some villages, the bride brews coffee for the entire extended family. Not for approval, just as a quiet gesture. A way of saying, this is how I care. You wonder how many modern love languages would be improved with a little. A hawk circles above as you finish the second round. Watches it like he knows it personally. Maybe he does. Historians still debate whether the coffee ceremony was originally domestic or spiritual. Either way, it's endured longer than most regimes and certainly longer than any diet trend. You breathe out slowly, the scent of spice and earth wrapping around your ribs. And then the hawk still circling. Still watching. You wake later than usual. Not because of exhaustion, just comfort. The kind that sinks in deep and holds you until the sun climbs high enough to be slightly annoyed, is already packing. Naturally, the man probably doesn't believe in pillows. Today's journey moves through scrubland, flat and open. The sky feels larger here, like it's trying to show off. You squint upward, half expecting it to wink. As you walk, your shadow grows long beside you, mimicking your stride like an overly attached sibling. Time for a historical fact. Ethiopian traders used coffee not only as a beverage but occasionally as currency, particularly in regions where coinage was scarce. Beans were weighed, measured, and valued according to quality. Imagine doing your weekly grocery run with a pocket full of espresso roast. Tempting, isn't it? You stop near a patch of prickly shrubs and unroll the kit again. This time lets you light the fire. It takes you 3 tries, 2 muttered apologies, and 1 burned thumb. A fine exchange for hot coffee. As obscure cultural footnote. Some older coffee kits included tiny carved animal figures, goats, mostly as a nod to the legendary goat herder who supposedly discovered coffee when his herd got a little too energized. It's part joke, part homage. Like putting a dinosaur sticker on your laptop to honor the fossil fuel inside. Though the brew today is earthy, a little gritty, not perfect but honest. Historians still debate whether was a real person, a myth, or a well-marketed mascot. But his goats, definitely the first creatures to understand a caffeine rush. As the breeze picks up, carrying the scent of roasted beans and dried grass, you think about legacy. Not the grand kind with statues and speeches, but the small kind made of daily habits. And maybe, just maybe, this journey is one of them now. As the wind shifts around midday, no longer playful, it carries weight now. Not a storm exactly, just the kind of breeze that makes trees creak a little louder and your clothes feel slightly more dramatic than usual. You walk with your head tilted, listening to things that aren't quite words. As I says, almost there. You don't know where there is. But you nod because almost feels like a destination on its own. Your historical fact: coffee plants in Ethiopia grow wild in the forests of the region, yes, possibly the namesake of the word coffee itself. These wild groves are protected and revered not just as agricultural treasures, but as part of the natural heritage of the land. Some beans don't need farms, they just need time. You reach a grove. It's not majestic in a postcard way, more humble, more tangled. Branches twist like they've been whispering secrets to each other for centuries. Red coffee cherries cling to the plants like reluctant confessions. Guy crouches down and gently plucks a few. He doesn't crush them or roast them, just holds them, turns them in his palm. He says, "This is where mine came from." You don't ask if he means his beans, his family, or himself. An obscure cultural moment. In certain regions, it's customary to sit in complete silence the first time you visit a coffee grove. Just sit, breathe, and wait for the place to speak. It's a kind of listening that's hard to explain on a resume. Also, you said, you listen. The wind rattles the branches like a soft tambourine. Historians still debate whether wild coffee was ever truly discovered, or simply noticed by people who were already paying attention. You sip from a brew made right there at the grove's edge. Simple, unfiltered, sharp. Oh, it doesn't need to impress. Oh, it just is. And in that, it becomes everything. You're walking slower now. Not because you're tired, but because there's less reason to rush. The road curves like it's stalling, unwilling to let this end without a little poetry. Is quiet too, his steps are lighter, his eyes somewhere else. Maybe he's been on this journey before, maybe he's always on it. You pass a series of low stone huts, half swallowed by earth and vine. Children play with sticks and discarded tires, their laughter echoing like across time. Today's historical fact is fittingly circular. Ethiopian coffee ceremonies aren't just about the drink, they're community rituals. When performed in full, they can last 2 hours or more. Guests are expected to stay for all 3 rounds. The first, the second, and the blessing, leaving early is frowned upon. In other words, if someone invites you to coffee, clear your afternoon. You reach one last hill. At the top, a single table stands. No one is there, but the table waits like it always has been, gestures for you to sit. He pours. Though the brew is deep, dark, layered. You taste all the places you've been, all the mornings you didn't want to get up, all the fires that burned just long enough. Here's your obscure tradition for the road. Some say that if you can taste the past in your final cup, you're ready to carry it forward. You don't know who some are, but you believe them. Historians still debate how much coffee shaped Ethiopian identity, or if it's the other way around. But as the sun begins to dip and your cup nears empty, you find yourself believing in something quiet. Though that warmth has memory, though that stories steep slowly, and that maybe the journey was never about caffeines. Maybe it was about learning to sit still long enough to feel awake. Though the sky folds in on itself slowly, like a letter never meant to be sent. The dusk drapes the hills in a shade of velvet blue you don't see in cities, maybe because cities don't know how to hold silence this gently. Below, a fire crackles in an old stone ring. Above, the first star arrives without applause, but somehow still earns your attention. Doesn't speak, he doesn't need to. He pours the last cup with hands that have done this too many times to count and not enough to stop loving it. You accept it like a ceremony, like an ending wrapped in steam. Tonight's final historical note is a soft one. Some Ethiopian communities believe that to drink the 3rd round of coffee beneath the stars ensures dreams that speak in clear words. Not metaphor, not chaos, just messages. You sip slowly. It's than usual, not from sugar but from something else. A kind of closure that tastes like earth and rain, and every time you stayed a little longer than planned. Though the wind softens, even the trees hush. And here's your last obscure tradition. Some grandmothers bury a used coffee bean in the earth after a long visit so the guest returns, even if they forget why. You look down at your cup. One bean remains at the bottom. You press it gently into the soil beside you. Historians still debate whether these gestures were ever truly magical, or just a way of making memories feel tangible. But right now, as the night closes its hands around you, the stars spinning so slowly you can almost hear them turn. You feel it. Not magic exactly. Just a presence. The fire burns low, its last sparks drifting into the dark like glowing commas, not ready to end the sentence. Your limbs are heavy in the good way, the way stones are heavy when they've finally stopped rolling. The breeze is warmer now, not eager, not shy, just enough to remind you that you're not alone out here, not really. You listen, not for voices, just for the sound of everything not needing you right now. The rustle of trees folding in for the night, the quiet sigh of a kettle cooling beside the coals, the breath of someone nearby, maybe, or memory itself. Your hands curled gently in your lap. There's no rush, no clock, just the rhythm of a day well worn and a journey well steeped. As if you're still awake, that's okay. And if you're not, let that final sip linger somewhere deep in your chest, like a pocket of warmth that will wait for you tomorrow. Here at the end of the road, the beginning of rest, and the middle of everything that matters. You are safe. You are held. You are homed. And this story, it'll still be brewing when you returns.